Denied access to observe SYRINE's training, Maylin was pouting slightly as she wandered alone in the monastery. The preacher could not help but feel that either the sororitas had something against her, or they were hiding something with all their lame excuses. Still, Maylin was extremely grateful for this assignment. Thus far it had been nothing but a magnificent blessing. Just yesterday she was in the front row seat as SYRINE commanded the battle sisters to confront the heretic forces at the Scholastica, and it was beyond glorious. That scene of the Holy Daughter steadily dropping one order after another to secure a flawless victory was more breathtaking than she could ever have imagined. To further amplify her shock, Maylin later learned that it was the first time SYRINE had ever directly taken command of a battlefield. While still being dazzled by what she saw, later on the same day, during the wake session for the sisters fallen in their campaign, Maylin witnessed the Holy Daughter summoning angelic birds. She had heard about it happening once before at the monastery gate, but never imagined witnessing it with her own eyes so soon. Seeing the God Emperor's miracles manifested one after another was an extremely rare privilege in itself. The position also propelled Maylin to a meteoric rise within the ecclesiastical ranks. The young preacher suddenly found herself frequently interacting with many of the church's influential figures. Higher-ups who had once seemed distant and untouchable were now directly contacting her. It wasn't far from saying that Maylin was living the dream. More than once the preacher found herself staring into the mirror and wondering if she deserved all this. Everything happened so fast, the whiplash of changed fortune left her feeling stunned. Determined to make her time productive, Maylin thought for a while before deciding to interview some of the sisters about their experience with the Holy Daughter. I blazed through training with all the guns available from the sororitas' armory. The comprehensive list includes an auto pistol, a bolter, a bolt pistol, a storm bolter, a condemner bolt gun, a plasma pistol, a melter gun, various combi bolter variants, a hand flamer, a flamer and a relic inferno pistol. Of these the plasma pistol made the deepest impression as it literally fired miniature suns. It felt extra dangerous and even Alicia was looking more apprehensive when I practiced a few shots with it. Still, my focus was on the operating and reloading procedure of the weapons as the shooting part was a no-brainer for me. There were a few items which I was not encouraged to handle, namely the bigger versions of the famous sororitas' holy trinity of weaponry, the heavy bolter, heavy flamer and multi-melter. Something to do with the tradition and the long-held beliefs that it was beneath a commanding figure to operate heavy weapons. After some persistence I was allowed to fire a single salvo from a heavy bolter. An ammo box was used since I was without a power armor to use the belt-fed backpack. The bigger cousin of the bolter was much heavier and a rush to handle. It barked louder, kicked like a wild stallion, but was still manageable for me. From my brief experience with the heavy bolter, I saw the reasons why it might be counterproductive for a field commander to wield heavy weapons. These massive guns required a lot more attention to properly operate, and its user could easily develop tunnel vision, an issue that could lead to dire circumstances on a dynamic battlefield. Soon my ammunition was spent and the firing range was filled with splintered dummies, marking the end of my firearms crash course. It was time to move on to the next item on my to-learn list, power armor. After a short break while Wellmanor made a quick report of my progress, we proceeded to the primary armory inside the monastery. The first thing I noticed about the place was the sheer frenzy of sounds. There was a constant clunking and clattering of material resonating throughout the whole space, a ceaseless hum of servo motors and hisses of pneumatic tools punctuating the air, all accompanied by the occasional sharp snap of power tools. The air was thick with the scent of machine oil, metal, ozone, mixed with the subtle tang of sweat. Entering the place was like stepping into the heart of a mechanized hive. Many things were moving and buzzing with chaotic but controlled purpose. The interior of the armory was dimly lit with harsh lights that cast stark shadows from many weapon racks and armor stands. It was a hive of activity with busy workbenches swarmed by working servitors, and every space was cluttered with parts, tools, and half-assembled gear. Holographic displays flicker with readouts and diagnostics, casting a bluish glow on the faces of the many tech adepts in their activities. At one of the walls rows of damaged sororitas' power armor stood at attention, their surfaces marred by the scars of battle, waiting to be repaired and maintained. Alysia moved swiftly, seemingly familiar with the place, whereas Wellmanna fumbled along. Like me, her eyes were darting all over the place. Soon we reached the center of this dizzying place where a typical-looking tech priest stood. The figure was hooded in crimson robe with a simple omniscient axe in one hand. As Alysia walked over to greet the figure, I activated my noospheric connection to look around. The tech priest's digital signature was active and displayed a name, Hattie Ortal. Engineer Hattie. Alysia greeted casually. Probationary Palatine. I see you have esteemed guests with you. The tech priest responded in a synthetic voice that was definitely female, the only indication of gender since none was given away by her appearance. I would like you to meet Lady SYRINE, the living saint candidate, Alysia said excitedly. And have you met Sister Wellmanna before? She currently acts as Lady SYRINE's personal assistant. We have spoken a few times at the library. Hattie exchanged a quick nod with Wellmanna before turning her optics to me. The fabled holy daughter, it is an honor. I am Engineer Hattie Ortal, overseer of this sanctified forge. May the Omnissiah bless thee. The Engineer said, forming the sign of Cog with her hands while looking at me while her glowing optics. I smiled and nodded in response. Nice to meet you, Hattie. I apologize for the sudden request, but would it be possible for you to immediately prepare an operational power armor for Lady SYRINE? Alysia asked, straight to the point. At this time when we are most pressed with repair rights from all the damaged war gear of the returned expeditionary forces? Hattie gestured around us, hinting at the massive workload. Lady SYRINE's request has priority. Alysia said confidently. Very well, with me. Hattie nodded and started walking, prompting an ancient-looking servo skull to fall in behind her like a loyal pet. We followed her into another space that was treated with some sound insulation, muffling the frenzied cacophony of the forge. There were more sororitas' power armor here, but unlike the ones outside, these appeared to be in pristine condition. I suppose we can start with a size S and tweak to optimize, Hattie said after throwing me a quick glance, quoting at my less than formidable stature. The tech priest then walked to a particular row of power armor that was slightly smaller than the rest. She pointed to those and said to me, please pick one and we can work from there. I looked at my options with complicated feelings. Back on Earth I had a hobby friend who openly declared it was his lifelong dream to put on a functioning power armor, to see and feel what it was like operating such a mythical piece of war gear. Back then his silly remark was backed by many in the hobby circle, like who could resist the notion of armoring up like a space marine? And here I was, standing on the edge on realizing that distant common dream, but all my focus landed on an unfortunate detail on the power armors before me, those curvy breastplates tipped with an extra pair of decorative plating in the form of sororitas' fleur-de-lis symbol. I never gave it a second though seeing them on the sisters. In my mind they even looked kinda cool, but the very idea of putting those on myself sent revulsion down my spine. Oh throne, why? Fortunately, some of the offered armors came without those embarrassing details. Going through the few acceptable options, I clung to the plainest looking suit like a life raft in a rough sea and declared decisively, I will take this. This is not up for debate. While both girls did not comment, from their thoughts I knew they did wonder about why I went for the most unembellished piece. Just when we were about to proceed further, I sensed some unusual resonance, something was approaching fast. As I turned to face the direction, an instant later 2 servo skulls flew into the area. Reacting to the unusual circumstances, Alysia swiftly placed herself between me and the drones, her bolt pistol drawn and ready. Wellmanna stiffened up. The scholar usually went unarmed inside the monastery, so she just stuck closer to me. Sorry for the sudden intrusion, I was looking for Lady SYRINE. Balpraeus ignored the weapon pointing at him and bowed to me. I was only made aware of your intention of retrofitting a set of power armor a moment ago. Since I received no response from hailing your servo skull, I came here myself. Ops, I left it in my room. Solace is kinda like my too often misplaced handphone at the moment. What is this regarding? Alysia demanded, not relaxing her aim. Palatine Alasaya, Balpraju's turned to her and replied with his cold, flat synthetic voice. You should know as well as I do, everything concerning Lady SYRINE is strictly confidential. Engineer Hattie does not have enough security clearance for this operation. Alasaya blinked and lowered her weapon. Seeing the battle sister had stood down, Balpraju's canted to Hattie. Engineer, I will take over from here. With all due respect, Margus, this is my place, my forge. By whose authority are you ordering me? Hattie asked, her dissatisfaction apparent. I carry the jurisdiction of Archtech Priest Dominus Cryptora Cycle, you are to do as I say. You may voice your objection to him directly, Balpraju's replied as one of his servo skulls canted a series of binary codes to Hattie, to which she eventually bowed her head. After that all four of us moved back to my room with the set of power armor I selected, the suit carried over by a servitor from the armory. First I was handed a body glove that came with the package to change into. It was a skin-tight outfit that was covered with fibro-muscle. This was the underpart of the power armor's inner system that was rarely seen up close in the lore. Upon closer inspection, the sheer sophistication of the body glove and the armor pieces left me in awe. The body glove was essentially an outfit of interwoven synthetic muscle fibers that was made from a composite of lightweight yet hyper-elastic material. The material itself shimmered with a subdued dark metallic blue, and on the surface of all the fibers was an intricate web of microweave patterns, mimicking the natural striations of muscle tissue. Running along the limbs and torso were delicate lines of circuitry, hinting at the body glove's integration with a power armor system. The armor pieces were mostly constructed from an advanced ceramite composite, famous for being almost impenetrable with small arms fire, the same type of material used on Space Marine power armor. Their interiors were lined with shock-absorbing paddings, providing further protection to its user. These plates also featured some ingenious interlocking system that was designed to provide maximum flexibility. Even with my untrained eyes, these things looked really expensive. I had a better understanding of the depth of technology and resources needed to construct these gear, and it became apparent why only the really powerful factions in the Imperium could employ power-armored troops. After changing into the body glove, under the supervision of Balpraju's, I began putting on the armor with the help from Alasaya and Wellmanor. This part of the process reminded me about cosplayers putting on their elaborate costumes, only in this case it was a real functioning piece of war gear. Piece by piece the armor was affixed onto me, and I noticed the expression of both girls brightening up. Alasaya was excited to see me donning her order's color, whereas Wellmanor was thinking I made the perfect image of a cute novitiate suiting up for the first time. Soon the final piece, the power backpack, was put in its place, and I felt the full weight of my armor. It was unexpectedly manageable, but my sensation for weight was so skewed from a normal person I had no idea how heavy it would be for a standard human. There was a slight hum as power was turned on, and as the systems came online I immediately felt the weight pulling on me lessened as the armor started to support itself with the activated fibro-muscle network. Intrigued, I moved and flexed my arms, testing my movement. "My lady, try walking around. Please be careful," Alasaya advised, and I started moving as suggested. At first it felt strange. The activated fiber bundles acted like extra muscles that automatically mimicked my movement while providing momentum and aided strength. The power armor and its space-age materials felt amazing, although not reaching the second skin level described in a lot of Space Marine stories. It was surprisingly comfortable despite having all the extra layers of stuff added onto me. I got used to it and was moving naturally in no time. While doing so I caught a glimpse of Alasaya's mind as she briefly reminisced on her embarrassing incident of immediately tripping over while using power armor for the first time. Balpraju's, who was silently observing all this time, spoke up, "My lady, please try moving your arm as quickly as possible for a stress test." "What do I need to do? Throw a punch?" I asked. "That would do." Balpraju's nodded. I did as instructed, throwing out a punch, and felt my movement strangely impeded. "Again." Balpraju's instructed. I threw a harder punch, It was faster this time but still definitely slower than if I was unarmored. How did it feel? Restrained. It feels like the armor was slowing me down. I answered honestly. As I predicted, it could not keep up with you, Balprajus said with a contemplating gesture. What is happening, Margus? Asked Alasaya. The armor system is hardwired to human limitations, not meant for a user with my lady's magnificent level of physiology. I can adjust the internal settings to an extent. It will be serviceable but not optimal, Balprajus said as he extended a mechadendrite, a thick mechanical wire extension that could move like a tentacle, and connected it to a hidden port on my armor. The tech priest then spent some time working on a data slate before saying, I have tweaked some settings and just set the encryption level for biometric readout of your armor to the highest level. In addition, I added extra tweaks to mask your twin heartbeats. The tech priest's words stunned me and the girls for a second. That was definitely something we had overlooked. He then asked me to throw another punch. I did so and felt a huge difference, both sisters flinching as my armored fist flew out with inhuman speed, the force amplified by the armored mass. It is not 100%, but a massive improvement, I said, quite happy with the improvement. I am afraid this is as far as it can go. To fully compensate you will need at the very least a Astartes grade system, Balprajus said while nodding sagely to himself before continuing to explain. Do note from this point onwards this armor is no longer suitable for unaugmented human usage. To do so risks severe user injuries. Why is that? Wellmanna asked, her scholarly curiosity intrigued. Balprajus turned to look at her before answering. The motion feedback limiter had been set to minimum, effectively disabled. As a result, under extreme circumstances a standard human might experience muscle tear or even bone fracture with improper usage. As both girls turned pale on that horrifying notion, Balprajus turned to me and continued his lecture. My lady, if possible please refrain from excessive usage, else the armor system might not hold. At any rate, I highly suggest having a custom set of master-crafted power armor tailor-made for your specifications. You know anyone capable of doing that? I asked while flexing my arms, still getting used to the sensation of being encased in a functioning power armor. Balprajus bowed again. I know a few individuals capable of such a feat. With your permission, I will gladly undertake this project and make sure the final result is thrice blessed by the Omnissiah, befitting your status. The tech priest left after receiving my consent to custom build my armor. What followed was crash courses about basic operational procedures and equipment familiarization. The first thing I needed to do was to get familiar with putting on the armor by myself. Getting this part right was tedious but necessary. After a few trials I was able to go from just the body glove to fully armored up unassisted under 5 minutes. There was still room for improvement on my speed, but it would do for now. The trickiest part being putting on the power backpack by myself unaided. They usually used a custom stand for that. With the fundamentals sorted, we proceeded to an obstacle training course. After Wellmanna helped me sort out my hair, tucking the ones on the back of my head into my body glove, I put on the Sabbat pattern helmet that came with the armor for the first time. As the solid piece of headgear slid smoothly down my head and completed an environmental seal with a soft hiss, the system inside the helm came alive as a myriad of colorful indicator runes lit up. My breathing and the low humming of my power pack started to echo softly inside the sealed suit. The surrounding sounds became muffled until the audio feed was turned on. I looked around and a targeting rune appeared. It moved around in my field of view, tracking my eye movement. I turned to Alasaya, and immediately the targeter labeled her as a friendly and even recognized her rank, marking the sister as a palatine. The system interface was high-tech yet gothic-looking, typical of the unique grim dark aesthetic. Another crash course later, I familiarized myself with the helmet settings and usage on photovisor and presight settings, as well as how to use the built-in calm link like a normal user even though I could access it directly with my ability. That sorted, we proceeded with the main event and I went through the hoops of going through the obstacle course in my armor. It felt like a movement tutorial of a first-person shooter. That said, having a Primarch-grade mind and body meant I was operating at an inhuman level of physical efficiency, and it showed. Whether it be running, overcoming walls, plank crossing, rope climbing, or even the notorious monkey bar swing, I easily aced through all of them without trying much or breaking a sweat. According to Wellmanor, I even broke several speed records along the way, but beating human records as a transhuman was nothing to be proud of. After just half a day's work, Alicia nodded with satisfaction at my performance and declared I was fully proficient with the basics of power armor operation. With that, it was time to set my sight on to the next major challenge, jump pack usage. It was late in the lunch hour and Malin was conversing with a random group of battle sisters she had met in the mess hall. At first the sororitas were guarded against an outsider, but the preacher's bubbly personality and apparent devotion towards SYRINE soon relaxed and won them over. They were chatting amicably when the preacher took the chance to state what was on her mind. "Rejoice, sisters, we are all truly blessed. Just yesterday, like many of you, I was lucky enough to see the divine doves with my own eyes. By his will, together we should soon witness the canonization of a living saint. I was wondering if anyone has any interesting stories about the Holy Daughter to share." "What is this about?" a sister asked, a hint of wariness in her tone. "It is part of my duty to chronicle an emerging living saint's many manifested miracles and deeds for posterity." Malin spoke with a sense of purpose, but her keenness was met with silence. It was a short while before a battle sister spoke up. "Well, now that I think about it, I believe the Holy Daughter saved my life." The sudden confession surprised everyone around the table. "Sister, I would very much like to hear your story." Malin responded quickly, her eyes sparkling with the enthusiasm found only on a true fan. "Sister Ephraim, I do not recall you ever having a direct interaction with the Holy Daughter," warned the Sister Superior at the table. "If this is an act of self-indulgence and your story turns out to be nothing but fabrication, you'll be confined to the cabin of solitude and made to copy the full litany of repentance 300 times as penance." "I am not saying she personally pulled me away from danger or anything like that, but hear me out," Sister Ephraim said calmly. "It happened yesterday when the heretics clashed with us. During the thickest fighting, 2 hostiles were suddenly registered to be very close to my position. I immediately turned my bolter in that direction but found myself pointing at a short wall obscured by some foliage. Damn targeter, I swear they are always glitching in the worst of times," laughed one of the sisters. Ephraim shrugged and continued her tale. "That was my initial thought too. Just as I was about to move on, 2 heretics showed their heads and peeked over from that wall, exactly where I saw them to be and right into my iron sight. How convenient. Hey, I wasn't going to question my blessings. Firing my bolter, I blew the head off from the first heretic and shot the other through the flimsy wall, then bang. Huge explosion. Throne's blood. I think I heard that one, far left flank in the courtyard, right? Yes, I was at the left flank. Even with the main impact cushioned by the wall, I was thrown off my feet. Turns out the scums had crack grenades on them. If those bastards had managed to sneak up to me with those, I surely would be at his side right now. While I am glad you came out fine, what has this got to do with the Holy Daughter?" Malin asked, confused by the story. "You don't get it, preacher," Sister Ephraim explained. "The targeting system in our helmet doesn't work over solid objects. The fact that I saw those heretics before their ambush must have been a miracle. I had heard a few stories like this before experiencing it myself. It seemed to only happen when the Holy Daughter was around." Now that you mentioned it, another battle sister chimed in. Several times in the midst of battle, the heretics' positions suddenly became astonishingly vivid in the readout. I avoided a few risky situations because of that. "Wait, you experienced that too?" Malin watched in astonishment as the sisters around the table started sharing their strangely similar tales. Sister Ephraim thought for a moment before slowly untangling the prayer beads with a miniature symbol of the mini-storum that was tied to her glove. The battle sister then held the symbol up with her hands, gave it a light kiss before looking at Malin with fierce conviction. "Preacher, I stand by my account and swear by the throne it contains no falsehood. As of now, I truly believe it to be one of the holy daughters' more subtle blessings. It will be your duty to verify these claims. Maylin's jaw dropped. She had been there when it all went down but had never contemplated on the possibility of missing out on miracles manifested right before her eyes. I was having fun and did not realize lunchtime had arrived until I felt the pang of hunger on Wellmanna's mind. Alysia, on the other hand, fared much better for being a battle sister. Regardless, I insisted the girls go take a quick lunch before we move on with further training. Since I was not feeling hungry at all and was still on a once-per-day meal arrangement, I didn't join them. Usually this would be my library time, but there was little point in doing that anymore, plus it felt strange reading books while wearing power armor. In the end, I decided to just go back to my room. After returning to my not-so-humble lodging, I sat down and noticed the sturdiness of the furniture. The Gothic chair was delicate-looking, yet it handled the extra weight of my power armor without a squawk of protest. I took off my helmet, putting it aside before pulling the back of my hair out from my body glove. My eyes were looking around and settled on one of the mirrors where a heavenly girl stared back, the sight of her silky platinum hair cascading down onto her color-matching dull silver armor was such a vision of otherworldly grace it took my breath away. Is it because of the power armor, or I am looking more and more like a living saint? As I sat there simply staring at my reflection, the disturbing vision from last night when my face was a featureless blur jumped at me, jolting my mind. What was my face like back on Earth? Strangely, even with my photographic memory, I was having difficulty recalling my old face. All I could picture was a demi-goddess. It was still less than a month since I took over, but with the many things that happened since then, it felt like a few lifetimes had passed. Absent-mindedly, I ran Analytica on myself. A familiar line of text appeared in my vision. Name, SYRINE, Primarch Minoris, Psychopassive Mode, Abnormal Existence. With bated breath I ran Analytica, specifically on the abnormal existence, and like many attempts before this, my vision went blurry for a fraction of a second and all the text disappeared. It will break you. I almost heard her words again. I let out a soft sigh and settled down, then tried but failed to relax as my mind ran wild assessing the current situation. Being a person with a sedentary lifestyle in my past life, the notion of me actively pursuing physically demanding activities felt strange at first, but I soon got used to and even learned to enjoy it. That, and all of it, felt necessary. A gut feeling had been constantly nibbling at the back of my mind, telling me another storm was brewing. Between the active chaos cults with its leader on the move, the notorious cardinal returning, the still missing mysterious space marines, and the hint of a demonic grudge, there was no shortage of troubles in the near future. The threats I knew about were bad enough. Yet, my experience from decades of stumbling through reality whispered another chilling truth. In this vast, unforgiving world, the most lethal threats usually lurked in the depths of unknown shadows, unseen and looming in places I wouldn't even imagine exist. From what was known to me from common law, the abundant availability of options for tactical insertion in this era, like drop pod assaults and teleporting strike forces, was a thing. The ability for resourceful enemies to send elite super soldiers wearing armor as thick as a battle tank directly to your face was a reality, rendering the concept of safe behind the front line an antiquated point. Primarch Minoris or not, I would be as good as dead if I was ever cornered by such attacks without the means to confront them, hence the need to quickly learn up on martial skills. This was the grim dark universe after all, a place where direct and brutal confrontation was inevitable and rival battlefield commanders had an uncanny chance of settling their differences in a final glorious melee combat. I certainly would not fancy being caught up in such a scenario without having the skills and tools to deal with them. I had for now learned to shoot and put on power armor. While having power armor was good for increasing the odds of surviving a battlefield, having the ability to fly would be much better for hightailing out of any danger, so getting jump pack training was another high priority for me. Besides, who didn't dream of flying around by putting rockets on one's back as a kid? On that note, Anyone familiar with the grimdark universe will instantly recognize the sororitas' seraphims from a glance. Power-armored ladies with jump packs that were shaped into angelic wings. What is not to like about them? However, upon closer examination of what it took to create the seraphims, the absurdity of it becomes glaringly apparent. In fact, the very concept of seraphims teetered on the edge of pure insanity. The ecclesiarchy, or the church, with the blessings of the imperium, essentially chose the finest examples of ambidextrous individuals from the childbearing gender of our species for this role. The selected girls then underwent special forces level training from a young age while being constantly indoctrinated with religious faith. Those who survived the brutal process were equipped with power armor and jump packs on their back, and then these girls were launched directly into battle to engage all manners of galactic monstrosities in close quarters, pistol-range combat. And that was essentially one of the most highly trained human military units a galactic-spanning empire of humanity could offer. To meet the basic requirements for becoming a seraphim, one must possess the dexterity of a ballerina and the base body strength of a weightlifter, adding being ambidextrous on top of that. It was simply well beyond the capabilities of an average human. As I contemplated on the subject, the master records for past seraphim trainees from the monastery's library solidified in my mind. The convenience of it was a welcomed surprise. With the information available in my mental space, I went through with it and noted the chillingly substantial training injuries and dropout rate. There was, however, no denying the winged ladies' effectiveness, nor how glorious they looked on the field. The few times I personally witnessed them with their mastery of flight always left me with a sense of awe. Every single one of them was a man-sized lethal combination of firepower with proper protection and notable mobility. As I daydreamed, my superhuman-level senses picked up on approaching footsteps and their vibrations. A small crowd had come to visit. I sent Solace to open the door, and my visitors turned out to be Canonis Diadenar with all four of her palatines, Markila, Wellmanor and strangely, Balpragus again. Notably, everyone here knew my true identity as daughter of the Emperor. Upon seeing me in power armor, Diadenar's usual icy facade melted and she smiled proudly. After the Canonis bowed to me with the group, she moved in for a closer inspection, eyeing me up and down while beaming with a sort of motherly pride. "My lady, you look truly magnificent," Diadenar praised, and the palatines nodded in agreement, with a few of them silently wondering why my armor was so plain-looking. Speaking of mind reading, I sensed a subtle tension, revealing that this wasn't just a casual visit. "Thank you. Surely you all weren't just here to see me in my armor?" I asked, carefully keeping my tone friendly. "About that," Diadenar bowed again, and when she raised her head again her expression was grim. "Please enlighten us, are we to expect any major confrontations in the near future?" "Huh?" I found out an edict had just arrived from the church. For the first time in 400 years the Order of the Shining Beacon was formally ordered to expand and increase their ranks. That, coupled with my timing of sudden interest in martial training and putting on a power armor, had spooked the sisters. Naturally they speculated I had foreseen some serious troubles ahead. While technically they were correct on that assumption, I was no Eldari Farseer and had no prescience into the future. It was kind of awkward, after reconfirming with the sisters that I was preparing myself to avoid another weapon fumbling incident. Everyone relaxed and the topic of discussion moved to my request for jump pack training. Due to the high-risk nature of jump pack usage, while none had said it out loud, the sisters were worried about the risks involved. Imagine being held responsible for putting rockets on the back of the prophesied Holy Daughter, and sending her flying at literally breakneck speed into a cliff. Margus Balpragus came in handy at this point and flexed his knowledge on the subject matter. Omnissiah be my witness, I can guarantee that under standard atmospheric conditions on this planet, Lady SYRINE's hyper-advanced biology could easily withstand terminal velocity impact with minimal ill effect. Such activities, when done with the necessary precautions, pose little threat to her well-being. What? In gaming terms, I am immune to fall damage. While that sounded assuring coming from a tech priest, I had no interest in ever trying that out myself. It also reminded me of an incident during the Horus Heresy where a traitor Primarch survived multiple direct hits from Titan weaponry. Compared to that, the force of a relatively high-speed collision did look puny in comparison. Jump pack usage requires a thought control interface. Will Lady SYRINE be getting an augmentation? Sister Markila asked a surprising question. Now that she mentioned it, since well-known jump units like Assault Space Marines and Sororitas Seraphims were usually depicted as carrying weapons with both hands, it was never really made clear how they controlled their jump pack, other than the demands of near-instantaneous control and large-scale data transmission that would not be necessary. A non-intrusive brain signal reader would suffice, Balpraju's answered with the air of an expert before turning to me for confirmation. That, and unless my lady wishes to accept augmentations for maximum performance, I will gladly provide assistance if that is the case. Speaking of augmentations in this universe conjured the horrifying images of many Primarchs and their warriors who embraced such body modifications during the Crusade era. Those guys went all out on augmentics, basically retrofitting mechanical parts directly into their heads and bodies, then plugged in huge amounts of neural connectors and wires in the name of efficiency. Not for now, I answered with a poker face. More like, not forever if I can help it. The discussion then went to the vault. The sororitas were somewhat excited since the final countdown to accessing it had begun. Being the typical devotees, the sisters had made a deal with Cryptora on their rights to lay claim to anything of religious significance. Wellmanor even took the chance and asked the question that was on everyone's mind. My lady, any idea on what we will find inside that vault? Sorry, there's no improvement to my missing memory, so I really have no idea, I confessed with a shake of my head. We will have to find out what's inside together. Personally, though, I believed the odds of finding any religious treasures to be extremely low. The impromptu meeting then ended with most of the visitors leaving. Alasaya, Wellmanor, Sister Markila and Margus Balprajus had stayed behind to help with my next training program. Surprisingly, Markila once served as one of the winged ladies and qualified as a Seraphim trainee instructor. First thing we did was to test my compatibility with a brain decoder, a device that enabled jump packs to be controlled solely via brain signal, leaving the user's hands free. I learned these came in many forms. It could be embedded in a hood, shaped into a headband, worn as a circlet, or built into the decorative iron halo that stood on the power pack. To my relief, the test revealed I had excellent compatibility with the device, rendering the heavy-handed approach of augmentics or implants unnecessary. Balprajus then left to personally procure and prepare my jump pack from the armory, and I imagined Engineer Hattie would not be too pleased with that. We then followed Markila to a special large chamber where they had a lot of equipment specially used for the Seraphim training program. Arrangements were made so we had the place all to ourselves. Still in my power armor, I was put through the works, tested on body strength, grip strength, agility, sense of balance, general coordination, both aerobic and anaerobic endurance. While the sisters made little comments on my tests, from what I read on their minds and the occasional odd facial expressions, I knew my scores were exceptional. Yours truly was not a human, after all. The finale was a G-force tolerance test on a giant centrifuge. I was strapped to the contraption as it rotated at an ever-increasing speed. After the seemingly terrifying maximum speed was reached, they had to stop the test for failing to determine my threshold for G-lock, a point where the loss of consciousness occurred from excessive G-forces. With that done, I was deemed overqualified for the Seraphim program. Immediately starting my next phase of training, I was introduced to a gigantic indoor vertical wind tunnel that was used to simulate the free-fall period during a jump pack operation. It was a huge thing, measuring 64 feet in width, large enough for a whole squad to practice free-falling together. Its main structure was made of a transparent material for easy viewing from the outside. While it looked like a dream playground for indoor skydivers, it was hellishly loud when turned on, to the point where normal humans would need to wear a helmet or hearing protection when practicing inside it. A non-operational Seraphim jump pack was then fitted onto the back of my power armor. Although made of relatively lightweight material, I felt a significant extra pull from the winged backpack. Markila also put on a mock jump pack for a live demonstration. The aim of this exercise is to familiarize yourself with the air drag of having a jump pack on your back, Markila explained. Try climbing with the air, and then diving, and repeat the process. She then put on her decorated helmet and dived into the huge column of rising air. In the next moment she was ascending and descending seemingly at will by expertly controlling her pose. While being a total noob at the art of free falling, I nevertheless was able to quickly learn about its basics just by observing how she controlled her posture. The veteran sister continued her routine a few more times and performed a few tricks before dropping down to exit the wind tunnel. "Now you try, my lady," Markila said with a bow. With my default mindset of being a couch potato still lingering at the back of my mind, I put on my helmet and stepped into the tunnel with trepidation. A huge gale of air pushed me from beneath. The roar of rushing air was audible through my helmet, and suddenly my body was unshackled from the force of gravity, and I was floating. It was a totally fresh yet familiar experience, similar to my flight during a psychic projection, but with my consciousness staying in my physical body. It felt like pure bliss. I could not help but smile at the liberating sensation. Due to having a pair of wings fixed to my back, the odd aerodynamic profile of myself riding the rising air did take a short while to get used to. Eventually I got the hang of it and was able to climb up and down the column of air, albeit in a boring fashion. As I floated around wondering what to do next, a book materialized in my mind, titled Soaring on Wings of Faith and Fire, a chronicle written by Sister Sylvale, who was one of the most prominent seraphim during the Order's long history. Her most notable feat was leading a descent from high altitude and intercepting a rebel bomber squadron. Such was her skill that she was able to drop near the lead flyer to deliver a fatal blow, breaking the squadron's formation just before their bombing run. Within the span of a heartbeat, Sylvale's many chronicled tips and tricks on her decades of expert jump pack usage flashed before my mind, prompting me to immediately try them out. I quickly went through a series of standard tricks like back flying, daffy and carving with no difficulties. Wanting a challenge, I decided to just test the limits of my body control by trying one of the hardest known diving moves mentioned in the book, a personalized version of the head-down carving. After rising to the top of the tunnel, I brought my head down and aligned my body vertically. The rush of air intensified with its muffled roar rising inside my helmet as my body became a streamlined missile that cut through the wind. The sensation was indescribable, a mix of sheer thrill and power. Descending like an aerial predator, I initiated the carve dive with a slight tilt of my head and shoulders. Instantly, I felt the change in airflow, guiding me into a spiraling descent. My body rotated smoothly, and the ground beneath me started to spin, creating an exhilarating panorama where the horizon became a constantly shifting line, always tilting and spinning. I carved down the air column while imitating Sister Sylvale's signature pose shown in her book, with my arms close to my sides, hands flat and my legs slightly apart, toes pointed to top. Feeling the delicate balance of aerodynamics, I adjusted my posture minutely, every movement precise and deliberate as I steered my dive in a spiraling motion of controlled chaos. It was understood from Sylvale's notes that with jump pack usage and proper practice this move could be performed to create an erratic flight path that was capable of avoiding incoming small arms fire. The world below became a blur as my rotation sped up, and my vision morphed into a kaleidoscope of lights, colors and shapes. Between the rapid rotations, I caught glimpses of the sisters who were watching me. The expression on their faces. A mixture of bewilderment and anxiety. Time to stop playing. I brought my arms out to the sides for drag, and arched my back to slow down. The transition from head down to belly to earth was smooth, and almost felt well rehearsed for me despite this being my first attempt. The air resistance greatly increased as I controlled my posture to decelerate before landing and exited the tunnel. The sisters walked up to me as I took off my helmet. "How was that?" I asked, being quite proud but still a bit unsure about my maiden dive performance. "My lady, was that Sister Sylvale's spiral of faith?" Markila asked. Yes. Was it close? Very much so. That's a very arduous maneuver barely mastered by half of the seasoned seraphims in our order. Markila answered, her stoic facade barely containing the awe in her mind. Oops. I might have pushed all my cheats too hard to pull that off.